Story 1. I've been falsely accused of wrongdoing twice in my life, both times in a case of mistaken identity because the person in question had the same name as me. I was not mistaken for the same person twice, but two different people who were father and son. The first incident was in elementary school, when the son got himself sent to the principal's office, but they called my mother to inform her about how awful her son had been. Thankfully, I was 5 and clearly not the person sitting in their office. The second was decades later as an adult. I got served papers to appear in civil court. I was being sued for taking money for a painting job and then never completing it. I was, however, not a painter. When I reached out to the guy's lawyer, he basically didn't believe me, so I had to meet up with him and his client so he could verify that no, I wasn't a 60-something house painter who'd skipped out on a job. They were pretty amused when I told them I knew exactly who it was they were actually looking for. Though of course I didn't have any clue how to find him. Oh right, and the whole family lived across the street from me growing up. Story 2. My wife and I bought a home a few months before we got married and went on our honeymoon in Italy on a Mediterranean cruise. There was a guy there who I had seen around and casually said hi to all week, but we hadn't had a conversation. On the way back to the airport to head home, he mentioned he had overheard us mention we were from South Florida, and he told us he grew up there. This naturally started a conversation, and we got to talking about schools attended, which my wife had gone to the same school as him, but several years later. Then he asked where we lived. Now, the neighborhood I live in is not very well known even in town, so I usually say the major city name, but this time I called out my neighborhood by name. He then said, "I grew up in your neighborhood. I lived on 72nd Street. Are you serious? We live on 72nd Street. What house did you live in?" 1836, he said. My wife and I were stunned. We met the guy who grew up in our house halfway around the world. We talked a little bit longer, found out he lived in Maine now, but after that we had to go to our separate flights. Story 3. I once saw a Swedish movie called Smala Sussi. One song in the movie stuck with me, so I ended up searching for it for hours during the night. I eventually found it and directly put it in my music player. The next day at work, a new guy started at our workplace, and I was supposed to show him around. We got to talking, and I ended up telling him why I was tired, staying up all night searching for a song. Turns out the guy is the drummer in the song. I don't think anything more rare ever happened to me. Edit. I should have posted the song. People have already guessed it. No idea how. Act 2 notes about freedom. Story 4. I was born with my intestines hanging out of my body, a medical condition called gastroschisis. I have no belly button, but a long scar and warped flesh where it should be. There are no lingering medical issues from it. Story 5. I went to Las Vegas with my dad. He was playing craps and cashed out at exactly the same time as another guy. They both asked the dealer for their points card back. The dealer was shocked and said to the table that there are two people cashing out for exactly the same amount, $305, and had exactly the same first and last name. We walked over to meet him and discovered he was there with his son with exactly the same name as me. They were staying at the same hotel we were staying at. We all had a mini freak out, then went for beers to learn more about each other. There is more to the story, but I am not going to type it all out. I always thought it should be on some talk show about incredible coincidences. Edit, because so many people are asking. Both fathers own small businesses, and both of us sons work with our fathers. We don't have common names. I've never met another person with my dad's name, something not common like Andre McAllister, and my name is not super common. Our mothers have very similar names too, Mary and Maria, same origin. Both of us sons are left-handed. 10% of the population are lefties. Small things but add to the spookiness of the story. Story 6. Had a good amount of the tip of a serrated steak knife broken off into my shoulder. I used to repossess cars. A good chunk of the time, people who were getting their cars towed would cool down after you explained the process to them and who they should really be taking their frustrations out on. But for the 4 or 5 people that get it, there are 50 or more that don't. A coworker and I were picking up a car in a pretty rough neighborhood. As I was watching out to make sure no one messed with my coworker as he hooked the car up, I heard someone yell and felt what I can only describe as a very forceful pressure, like a dog bite, on my shoulder. I turned around, pushed this person off me, and instantly felt this pain going from my right shoulder all the way down to my gut. I saw this guy holding a steak knife with the tip broken off. My coworker, who is now freaking out and running towards me, tells me I'm bleeding like crazy. Sucked for sure. And weirdly enough, some days if I'm wearing a lot of layers or doing certain activities, my shoulder tweaks a bit. Story 7. I am 23 and I still have a baby tooth. An adult tooth never grew in, so it never popped out. The dentist said they were unsure if it will just pop out randomly. Edit. Posting this, I thought it was pretty uncommon. While I have never met anyone in person with a baby tooth, seeing so many people here with the same thing has been pretty cool. Story 8. I have an incredible superpower-like sense of smell. I can smell when my wife has gotten gas on her way home from work. It's not that she spills gas all over herself. I can just smell a slight scent of gasoline from her standing near the pump. It's actually really annoying. We can't use candles because it smells so strong I get headaches. If a candle's cap is slightly unsealed, I can usually smell it as soon as I walk into the house. Story 9. I managed to sync up Pink Floyd to a total solar eclipse in 2017. I listened to Brain Damage and Eclipse, and the line, "But the sun is eclipsed by the moon," finished right as the sun was eclipsed by the moon. Story 10. When I was in high school, I started a fundraiser for charity, water in the Dogecoin subreddit that raised about $1,500, which I converted and donated on the user's behalf. The Dogecoin Foundation saw it and kept it going, creating Doge for Water and fundraising $40,000. In the official Reddit thread, they have an edit at the bottom thanking my old Reddit account for trailblazing it at the start. Definitely my proudest experience from high school. Story 11. I had an hour-long conversation with a writer from Sesame Street on a flight from Denver to Seattle. It was great. She was very funny. After we landed, she saw the handcuffs and the 2 extradition agents with me. Story 12. My mom got me arrested under assault charges for accidentally stepping on her foot. You know how in SpongeBob, there's that one fish that always rolls around yelling, "My leg! My leg!" That's what my mom was like. Except she was yelling, "My foot! My foot! Look at it! Look at my foot! You see that mark?" She did that. She went umph. I couldn't even walk properly. I had just been discharged from the hospital and was learning to walk again. Story 13. I was shot in the ass cheek at age 10 and still have the bullet in my ass cheek. Edit. It's an aluminum BB, and this was some 16 years ago. I'm gonna ask about it next time I go to the doctor, but I'm pretty sure I might just leave it since aluminum does not rust. It's always been a funny story. Story 14. I'm almost like Batman, except I don't own an underground Batcave base, I don't have a multi-billion-dollar empire, and I don't drive a really expensive car, but both of my parents were murdered. Story 15. I produced a TikTok sound with more than 6,000 videos recorded to it, and I hate them all. I made no money from it. Edit, because everybody asks about it. I never uploaded it myself. It's a bootleg I made with a friend of mine that also has over 100,000 views on YouTube. Multiple channels uploaded it as original sounds, and the biggest channel seems to have deleted their version, leaving only about 4,000 left. By the way, that sounds like a lot, but the "Oh No" sound has 17.5 million recorded videos. That's a whole different ballpark. Honestly, I was drunk when I finished the song because we were at a party, and the plan was that I send it to him the next day so he could play the song at a gig in another town. We were drunk, and out of spontaneity he said that I could travel with him, but that meant I had to get tickets and finish the song. We both don't like the song anymore because it's not that well made, innovative, or whatever. And as it is a song about drugs, the TikToks are basically edgy people who have never seen drugs and people who have definitely seen too many of them. Story 16. My Wikipedia articles are read by millions of students in the United States and have been translated into more than 40 different languages. I just double-checked. That's a bit of an exaggeration. It's only about 10 articles. I'd rather not say exactly which ones, but I'm happy to answer questions about the process. Story 17. A drunk driver hit my neighbor's house and cut a gas line. My neighbors and I broke into her car and got her out. The house exploded, but no humans died. The city gave a bunch of us the status of citizen hero. I'd give it back, though, to regain my stuff since my girlfriend and I lost all our worldly possessions, and I'll tell you, it's the small stuff that hurts the most. Story 18. When I was in elementary school, my friend and I had a BB gun fight, and I managed to shoot him in his hand. We were behind trees and taking turns shooting at each other. He had to go to the emergency room, and we kind of fell apart after that. Years later, I'm living in a different state, and my wife calls me as she's on a plane traveling from the West Coast back east. She tells me there was a guy on the plane who sat next to her and told her about how his brother got shot in the hand with a BB gun when they were kids. She asked if his brother's name was, and it turns out it was the kid I shot 2 decades earlier. That same weekend, I came out of a movie theater with some friends, again in a different state from the incident, and ran into the kid I shot. Fortunately, he didn't hold grudges and showed me the BB that was still lodged in his knuckle. The odds of this whole situation are beyond me. Story 19. I accidentally sent some secret government documents to the wrong email address because of a typo. Luckily, the person who received them just replied with, "What is this?" Story 20. This will probably be buried. I spent time in jail after being wrongfully swatted under suspicion that I had been converted to join the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria when they were at their peak, scaring everyone globally. A coworker had called the police to my home because I had once explained to him that the birthplace on my passport lists a Middle Eastern country. My girlfriend at the time was also Middle Eastern, and I had experience doing maintenance with aircraft and had once met Saudi Arabian combat pilots. I consequently had my electronics confiscated by the police, and I was promptly investigated by our country's Federal Bureau of Investigation equivalent, and also had a visit from an agent from the Central Intelligence Agency/Counterintelligence equivalent. It was revealed to me that an Afghan translator questioned my father if I had been radicalized. My father's only response, in a humorous and completely baffled manner, surrounded by armed federal special weapons and tactics agents, was, "Radicalized? The only Middle Eastern thing he knows how to say is shawarma." After a year or so of being investigated, charges were dropped, rightfully so, as no evidence was ever conjured. And to this day, I have not spoken to that coworker. I was not compensated. I've heard he was sorry but never confronted me. This led to me losing my job and my girlfriend at the time. I am also not a national or native to the country of origin where I was born. My parents, much to the investigator's surprise, were found to be diplomats in that country during the Gulf War, which is why I was born there. Story 21. Was a high school dropout. Hated mathematics more than anything else in the world. Went on to study mathematics at an Ivy League university but couldn't continue for over a year due to lack of funds. Currently pursuing an honors degree in mathematics at a reputed university in Canada. Story 22. I died for several minutes and was about to be pronounced dead when I came back. Yes, I have low-grade brain damage, mostly short-term memory and focus issues. Story 23. 1. Ran away from home at the age of 2 with my brother, age 3, on our tricycles. We didn't make it far and stopped for a break at the playground where the police caught us. We were just going to visit Grandma from Pennsylvania to Texas. I have a genetic disorder that prevents me from sweating called ectodermal dysplasia. When I was a child, my mom would make me wear a cooling suit with water tubes that ran to an icebox with a water pump so I wouldn't overheat. She used to tell me it was like the Flash's suit to make me feel better. I think this may have been true of the 1990s movie they made. Story 24. My family is full of players. This doesn't feel like a coincidence because my great-grandfather, a former judge, slept with so many women before passing away that he had 52 children with several women. Story 25. Survived cancer 3 times. Some doctors said I would die after the 3rd diagnosis. This included more than 40 sessions of chemotherapy. This was followed by a bone marrow transplant, which included 50 days of complete isolation, and I almost died. A decade later, I underwent open-heart surgery, a double bypass. The doctor was surprised I was alive until then, as I had 99% blockage. I am only 35. Story 26. I have dermatographic urticaria, a condition that apparently affects 2 to 5% of people, yet no one else I know has it, and I had no idea what it was until my doctor diagnosed me with it. Story 27. I bench pressed 365 pounds when I weighed 198 and set a university record for non-athletes. I tore my pectoral muscle completely benching 315 pounds. I've been inside 2 different schools during school shootings. I was held hostage when I was 3 with my sibling and my mom. I survived 2 other shootings at a party and a bar. I've totaled 2 cars and 1 motorcycle. I'm a lucky person. Story 28. In 2012, I was a fireman in Mississippi, and my wife got a promotion which would take us to Georgia. I was conflicted about the move and sad to leave my coworkers. I put in my notice on a Sunday evening after we watched The Walking Dead as a shift, which was our routine. My best friend at the time got all excited and tried to be positive by saying, "He's moving to Georgia and they filmed The Walking Dead there." Jokingly, the shift told me to make sure I went and took pictures of where they filmed and send them to everyone. Fast forward to months later when I called my best friend on a Sunday afternoon while he was working and said, "Tell everyone to watch for me." They were all in shock. Oddly enough, when I moved, my neighbor was closely associated with the show. I was fortunate enough to be an extra on the show for 6 seasons as some cool featured zombies.